So, and here we go again. It's 12 seconds past 15 minutes past 4. So good to have you again as my guest, Matt. Good to see you. Welcome to our LinkedIn Live. And you are the first person where I have it for the second time on my LinkedIn Live. Yes. So warm welcome. And could you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, please, first?
Of course. So, I mean, I've been a headhunter since 2012, and most of my career has been focused on the Swiss pharmaceutical industry. So this might be interesting to your viewers. I've placed heads of Europe, vice presidents, senior directors, managers, associates, nearly every position you can imagine in pharmaceuticals at some point I've hired for. In terms of Switzerland, I've probably worked with, it's probably easier to say the companies I've not worked with than the ones who I have. I've probably not worked with 4 or 5 companies in Switzerland. So I'm sure there are other headhunters out there who have a lot of experience in Switzerland, but certainly I've done it for over 10 years in my last company, and I'm happy to share my insights with everyone out there. I'm the honest recruiter, and I want to prove that. So that's kind of what I want to offer you guys today. These days I started a new company, so I'm the managing director of Open Book Executive. I'm not as Swiss orientated as before, so I'm a bit more focused within the specialty generics industry. But as I grow and I hire people, I'd hope to make a footing back in Switzerland. So yeah, so great to be here, and I just want to hopefully add some value for those out there. So I appreciate looking for a job is quite a difficult, painful, emotional journey. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of things that are known to people, and if I can help shed some light on that, I would really like to help people.
That's very cool that I see that people already know how to use it and that they can place comments. I don't see the comments on LinkedIn, so I cannot react on it, but I can show them to Matt, and he can see it on the screen as well. We will reread those questions which you have, so those people who are only listening, growing, running, whatever they are doing. Several people told me, this is my favorite podcast for my exercise. So that's good. Like that. So we read the questions, place those questions, please. And then we can take it. So what motivated you to become the honest recruiter? Matt, tell me, because and we touched on it already in the past, my experience with headhunters, recruiters was terrible. So what motivated you to label yourself the honest one?
Well, it's funny to talk about sleep earlier. I mean, it's just so I can sleep at night, to be quite honest with you. It's like, if I'm very honest and open in everything I do, I've got nothing to worry about. So from a purely selfish perspective, that's why I put myself as the honest recruiter, and how I like to say in terms of the work I actually do, I'm just very direct, transparent about needing everything I possibly can be, because it's just better for me personally. If we look at the industry overall, I mean, I think a lot of people have bad experience with recruiters, and it all boils down to the fact that I think short-term greed, and also the fact that ultimately the recruiters, like if I'm filling a role for a client, I'm going to get paid if I fill that role. So I want to fill that role as a recruiter. But sometimes in doing that, we're not always looking after the best interests of the candidate or the client. There's a lot of people who just focus on making the quick deal rather than looking at the bigger picture. So I want to try and avoid that. And yeah, for me, it's selfish reasons. Just I live a better life by being open and honest. And it makes recruiting a lot easier as well. Because if I'm honest, then I'm in conversations with candidates, I can be direct. So rather than pandering to people all the time, I can kind of just be very open, and no one's going to be upset because they already know what they were getting when they're having a conversation with me. So it's not all sunshine and rainbows, but
and then we have already a very nice comment. Hey Dana, good to have you here. So thank you for playing a little bit the devil's advocate. So does it mean that the rest of recruiters are not honest?
I mean, from talking to people, there's an old saying in recruitment: companies follow recruiters, not companies. So really good recruiters, even if they change companies, most of the clients go with them. So I would generally say there are good recruiters out there, but not in huge quantity. And that's maybe just my bias. I've been doing recruitment a long time. I've worked with many recruiters. I know a lot of competitors, and not many stick it out for very long. There's not many recruiters who maintain high sales for long periods of time and customer satisfaction. And it's a very hard job. Like if it was super easy, everyone would be a recruiter and everyone would be making lots of money and be there for a long time. It's not easy.
No.
So I don't want to be hating on recruiters. I'm a recruiter, and it is challenging, but I think there's a lot of room for improvement. I wouldn't come back to recruiting and set up this company if I didn't feel there's a lot of market share to be taken, to be quite frank.
So what are some dirty things which some headhunters do, for example?
Oh, okay. All right. So where do I even begin? So there can be a lot of companies posting fake jobs. So I don't think this happens a huge amount, but you will see some companies that just have fake jobs just to try and build a database of candidates. So that's one thing. One thing I think is quite controversial is something called speccing, where it's basically where you're sending candidates to companies, but the company hasn't signed anything with you or hasn't made any agreement to want to see the profile. There are some cases where this can work, both for the candidate and for the recruiter, but it's a very gray area. So there are sometimes companies sending candidates, sometimes without permission, to companies to try and open doors for themselves, and ultimately they never had the legality to do that. So with GDPR and things like this, it makes it even worse.
Yeah.
Other dirty things. I mean, I think sometimes there's some recruiters who are very, how to put it, they kind of can be a bit forceful with candidates, kind of manipulating people into taking a job. Because we're salesmen, and obviously saleswomen, salespeople, should we say, and ultimately we want to get somebody to take a role so we get our commission, right? So I think there will be a lot of recruiters who will be perhaps overly manipulative in the process of selling that role and position and company. It's an interesting question, and there'll probably be more things that come to mind, but I'd say there are a lot of shady tactics that some recruiters do. And again, I'd say it's a minority, but that still lays a bad image for a lot of recruiters. I'd also throw in that sometimes the clients themselves are the problem.
Yeah,
it's not always the recruiters. Like if the clients treated recruiters better or were more careful the recruiters they worked with, a lot of these things just wouldn't happen. So it's a two-way street. I think the industry as a whole, it could be done better. It's a simple answer.
Maybe we could differentiate between headhunters and intercompany recruiters, because this is a little bit different style of working. If you are a headhunter working on commission, is something else that if you are an employee of a company and then the name of the company you are searching for people. I strongly recommend to not mix up those terms, and I would call someone who is a headhunter, the person working on commission paid by the company, and company employees for me recruiters. For me, this makes this differentiation. We sometimes
I mean, I'm referring to agency recruiters, headhunters, exec search. There's a lot of semantics about exec search, headhunters, recruiters. You'll get some exec search people who say, "Oh, we do something totally different to other recruiters," and that's also kind of bullshit, to be honest. But we can go into that later. But yeah, internal recruiters is obviously different. Their job is to fill roles to the client. The issues with internal recruiters can just be if they're good or not. But that's the same in any industry, and I think some people can be frustrated on that. But that's another story.
Yeah, my experience with headhunters was you got all the time phone calls, you refused the offer, and they constantly started to squeeze you out some data out of you. Would be another person interested, blah, blah. And it was so annoying to me that I told them, I said, we have a policy, it wasn't true, that we are not allowed to give number and names of other person to headhunters. This was long time before GDPR, but it worked very well. Okay, so let's assume that headhunters are doing some bad stuff. What is the bad stuff people are doing? So the clients, the customers, what what are the dirty games they are playing sometimes.
Okay, so we've really gone straight into this, haven't we?
Yeah, well, we have only 45 minutes, and you know how it is. 10 minutes are already over. So
yeah, exactly. So I'd say, in terms of companies, I mean, I think I've got a lot of experience of companies treating recruiters a bit like a commodity, like just transactional commodity. Like send us CVs, and if we're interested, we might pay. So not really giving the recruiters much information, not giving much feedback to recruiters, what they want, maybe using multiple recruiters and playing them against each other. Like I think that there's good reason to have multiple recruiters on certain roles, but I think it should be very transparent, and it shouldn't be too many. Like you have some companies who are working with 7 different recruitment agencies in one role sometimes, and it's just chaos, and that's not good for the candidate, the client, or the recruiter in the day. But these are some of the things. Now and then we do have the odd issue of companies that won't pay or legal issues. But in all fairness, in my career, I've only had to sue. I've had to threaten to sue one company, and I've had to sue one company. And both times I won. So I feel I was vindicated. But generally, out of all the companies I worked with, that's very few. So I wouldn't say there's dirty games going on in terms of recruiting from companies per se, but things could be perhaps done a bit better. I think there could be some better structuring. There are sometimes that companies, well, I mean, here's one thing that's a little bit dirty or will upset a few people. You probably know in Switzerland, you have to post jobs in the portal for unemployed people, right? But what happens a lot of times, the company will only post a job once the job's filled. Because they have to. So a lot of recruitment happens, and then they're posting this job that's already filled to this platform, and people are applying to it, just wasting their time.
We have a nice comment of Steven. Thank you for that. So he wrote, I work with some truly outstanding recruiters, professional, knowledgeable, transparent, and generally invested in finding the right fit for both. But unfortunately, I came across far more that fall into the opposite category. So that there's a growing trend, especially from UK, that feels more like CV factories. Yeah. And so very wise. I felt several times like that. Thank you.
It's common. And when I was a junior recruiter, was I a bit like that? It's possible. It's certainly how a lot of the way we're brought up in that system encourages it. But I'd like to say I can tell you a very quick story. So why I went into this kind of very direct, honest approach is very young in my career. It's probably maybe 1 year, if not earlier, coming back to 2013. I was recruiting for a company in Basel, funny enough, a reg affairs person I think they were looking for. And I sent a candidate who I wasn't super sure about. I was like, they on paper, they're fine, but I'm not sure if they're going to get on. But I just sent the candidate anyway. I didn't tell the client my opinion. I just said, this person could be good because X, Y, Z. The person had an interview. It didn't go well. The client had some harsh words to say. And I remember walking back home feeling quite sorry for myself. And I just said, okay, from now on, I'm just going to tell everything to client and candidate. To be fully honest, if there's a candidate who I think is a bit, I'm not sure about, I'm going to tell the client. And that maybe is contrary to the general sales mentality in recruitment. But I'd say long term, it's made me a lot more money because it just meant that over time, clients trusted me. But it was actually telling candidates and clients things that aren't necessarily in my best interest in the short term isn't actually so common. So that's a little story as to why I got into this way of thinking. But I certainly think the sentiment on the market isn't particularly positive. And at the same time, I think recruiters have a rough time. It's not an easy place to work.
I know that in our pre-discussion, you tell something which shocked me about the big percentage numbers of people who are being basically recruited away from current positions. So why do recruiters often target individuals who are already employed and not looking more out to the people who are on the market?
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe for the audience, I'm very honest. I'd say 95% of people I hire are people who are already employed.
This shocked me absolutely. I had no idea that the number is so high. I somehow felt it. And all the time people asking career consultant, do you know any good headhunter? And I'm telling people, don't put too much hope into headhunters. And I had no proof for that. But now you're telling us.
Yeah, I mean, it might depend on the industry. I mean, I do quite senior positions, so I think it's going to be more skewed for me. If there's someone covering more mid, junior level roles, I think I can't imagine it'd be 95% in their case. But so, am I helpful for unemployed people? Statistically, no. Most of the time, no. That's kind of just a fact, and it's not that I don't want to help unemployed people. It's just a case of it's generally not. It's not seems to be what the clients that we work for are working for, are paying us for. But the reason why it comes down to this is pretty simple, right? Recruiters get paid quite a lot of money. Like, we're quite expensive. So let's say if I'm to do a director role in Switzerland, let's say the salary is 200K, and I've got a 25% rate for that. That's 50K, 50,000 francs a company's going to pay me for that hire. So the way to think about it is, if they're going to pay 50,000 francs to me or my business, then they're probably not very flexible. They probably want something that isn't coming their way normally, or there are exceptions. Sometimes it's a case they want to fire somebody, or it's a confidential role and it has to go through a headhunter because there's no way to find the person by advertising. But as a general rule, most of the roles that go to headhunters cost money. Therefore, if they were flexible or open-minded or able to just look at anyone, they wouldn't have given it to headhunter in the first place. More often than not. Exceptions don't always mean it's a rule, but it's just, this is kind of the reality. So I always want to manage expectations of people. That's all. We are the slave to the client. End of the day, we have to find them what they specifically want.
There's a question of Leonidas. What would be the best way to react against recruiters who at the beginning of the process are all over you, and after you proceed with the application that ghost you with no feedback?
I mean, I think the best way to react is just not work with them again and move on. It is very frustrating and painful for people, and I'm sure sometimes I might have ghosted someone without realizing it. But I've really made a strong point in my content and as a recruiter to always update people. And for me, it's just business sense. If I don't update people, then are they going to work with me in 2 years' time?
No,
probably not. But it is a frustrating thing. I mean, one advice I'd give to people is, where possible, work with recruiters who got references. Like, if there's 10 or 12 people who say they're good, they're probably okay.
Yeah.
If they have no references or no deal sheet or no proof of success, I'd always be a little bit skeptical. And maybe that's me being biased because I have all these things. I'm obviously a salesperson. I'm selling myself in some way, right? But
yeah, for sure.
If I was to work with a recruiter, that's what I'd be looking for.
Then we have another question. Come on. Why does it show up? LinkedIn is doing some crazy things, so I will read it loud. I wish to get some insight on current situation and the future of pharma in Switzerland and Europe. Yeah, Nagaraj, thank you for that question. I think this is a very, very difficult one. We could discuss only this one question for half an hour, probably, or longer. But could you do your own view of the thing? So how do you see it now? Depends a lot on the US administration at the moment.
So, I mean, a big factor in the last 3 years is the change of the Swiss franc, right? Swiss franc is worth more than €1 now. So the reality is, hiring people in Switzerland has got a lot more expensive over the last 3 years. And Switzerland was already expensive. So there are a lot of pressures on companies to not have people in Switzerland. So I think there are lots of positives to Switzerland. I think Switzerland's always going to have a strong pharmaceutical industry. I think there'll always be strategic reasons to have people there, tax reasons, IP reasons. There's good universities, but I'd be surprised if there's not more pressure for certain job types to go to other countries.
Yeah,
and that's just, I know it's not necessarily what people want to hear, but I think that's just the reality. Is like, if I had a pharma company in Switzerland, I'd
It's
want a few
already in
people
full
there.
swing now. You know,
Yeah.
when I started in the middle management position, we had 6 people in India, and now they are 10,000. You know, my latest department was moved to Slovenia, 230 people. So that's the way it is. It's not looking only in pink colors only. I see some improvements of the job market, but it's not that strong yet. How we are getting so many questions, I even cannot ask you my prepared questions.
It's
But
fine.
before I put Ina's questions on, I would like to ask you my favorite and very useful one. So what are some red flags that candidates should watch out during the hiring process?
With companies, or I mean, I'd like to give some advice to candidates overall, but I know it's a second question.
And maybe there is a second question. We can combine it together. So what are the common but rarely discussed reasons candidates get rejected in the Swiss recruitment process, even when they look like a perfect fit of paper? I think
Well, this I can answer straight away. The number one reason I see people get rejected is they talk too much. No one's ever going to say that. You talk too much, therefore we reject you. No one's going to say that. But I swear down that this is probably the number one reason I see people fail interviews. So I always recommend people in interviews the more the client talks, the better. It's like we have 2 ears, 1 mouth, use them in that order, sort of thing. So I think a lot of people get quite nervous, start talking a lot, go along monologues, explain things in way too much detail. And this is one of these little, it seems little, but I'd say it's probably the number one reason I see people fail. So that I don't know if that answers that outright, but that's honestly the best advice I can give is people sometimes need to be careful how much they're talking. Try to be a lot more concise.
Less is more. I tell it the same. When I'm preparing my candidates for job interviews, I'm telling the same. It's not about you, and it's a dialogue. And don't overwhelm the other people with information. If you are really short and concise, they will ask for more, and out of this nice ping pong of the interview will develop. Another nice one. Do you have advice for early career roles to start in the Swiss pharma industry after PhD, for example?
Yeah. Like entry level roles, not my area of expertise. So I'm not sure if my advice is good or not, in all honesty. I think general advice is networking early on, trying to make contacts. At the end of the day, a lot of getting a position is an element of knowing the right people. I think it's also having a positive attitude, making lots of applications. There is a numbers game involved with entry level roles. And I think this is advice to anyone really, but for anyone who is in a job search, just to make sure you are on self-improvement. Like you're looking to improve yourself, you're working yourself. I don't want to sound condescending, but every single little thing matters when you're competing with 10 other people. So if you're slightly sharper, you're sleeping better, you're looking after yourself better, you're better dressed, whatever these tiny little things can be, this can be the difference between you getting a job or not. There's an interesting thing I thought of recently about self-improvement. So I'm a big self-improvement nut, as you know.
Yeah. Our first coach was about good sleep. So that was our first life.
Sorry, imagine you've got 2 people, right, who live identical lives. They're same age, same sex. They have the same morning routine, evening routine, everything. Their lives are identical, okay? The only difference between these 2 people is that one has sugar in their coffee and the other doesn't. Okay. What do you think is a difference after 10 years from that one variable?
Yeah, a lot of fat on their bellies.
Yeah. So it's statistically it'll be 15 kilograms. And that's just by not having sugar in your coffee. So tiny little things in your life or your job search or how you look at your life can, in the long term, make a staggering difference in how your career will develop. So this is why I'm very passionate about self-improvement, and I'm constantly trying to improve the way I do things. So this would be all-encompassing advice for careers. I really believe in this.
And yes, and don't compare yourself to anybody else, but of your version week ago, months ago, year ago. This is my another advice, what I'm telling people, because, and really those tiny things have a a small gratitude exercise every morning or before you fall asleep. Positive affirmation, short stuff, that helps tremendously. There's another questions for young professionals. I won't display it, I will just talk it. I advise every young professional, network, reach out to people, but don't ask for a job. This is the magic. So if you network with the purpose-driven attitude, I will talk to Václav and Václav will bring me in a job. You are doing it already wrong. So like young professionals should reach out to people from their industry and not expect anything back. That would be my question. So
I like it.
So another one, it does, yeah. You are always interviewing. Every interaction, every action is being judged before and after you get the job. Yeah, very true. We have another. Which career level, entry, mid, or senior, currently presents the greatest challenge for breaking into the Swiss pharma industry? Additionally, how strong are the prospects for securing entry to mid-level roles in the current market?
I mean, I'm sure you covered this before. Like everything's down to supply and demand. Every role's different. So like a good example, like let's say you're a CMC biologics writer. You can write biologics CMC. You probably don't even need a CV because there's so much demand for biologics CMC writing that you could probably just have it written on a piece of paper and get a job still, because there's so much demand for that type of profile and there's very few people who can do that. While there might be another profile where there's very low demand or there's a lot of competition. So it's always down to market dynamics for every single role. So some roles are easier than others, and it's impossible to answer because it's so case by case. Like, for example, I'm sure there'll be some specific, like here's a role that's not going to disappear anytime soon. Like a affiliate pharma positions in Switzerland where you have to speak German, French, and English. And maybe you've got local level experience in regulatory affairs or medical or local sales experience. These jobs are always in demand. There's always demand for these people because there's very limited supply of people who speak all three languages and have the local level Swiss experience. So that's an example of a role which would be somewhat easy to get into if you have the languages or if you gain that skill experience. While some of these headquarter positions, there's a lot more competition because you're competing with Europe.
True. Another question. Yeah. What about the opposite spectrum position? Thank you for that, because this is my favorite topic. Do you see any positive evolution in the mindset in Switzerland for recruiting quote unquote older, overqualified workers?
It's a tricky, I mean, when it comes to a lot of questions about how recruitment works, what I always ask people is, if you were recruiting, what would you do? And normally what people tell me is, oh, well, I'd ask HR for maybe the top 3 profiles from rival companies. So then I'm like, okay, well, like you're basically just reconfirming the issues you find with the industry by how you would recruit yourself. So it's a case of like, everything's there's discrimination in everything, right? Like my job, strictly speaking, is to discriminate.
Yeah.
Like I'm just to find a group of people and then figure out who's going to be discriminate down to 1 or 2 people for the client, right? So I think with corporate companies, like big companies like Novartis, MSD, they have programs within diversity, inclusion, and things like this to try to deliberately have broader groups, be it race, age, gender. And we can argue the pros and cons to that, but that is a thing in big corporates. But in small companies, I don't think they have the bandwidth to even think about this. They're just thinking, okay, what's the first thing to mind when it comes to a role in person? So I think for more senior people, it is a challenge where it's a case of someone gets stuck in this gray zone where you're not maybe at the level for these super senior roles, but then you're too senior for the roles which are on the market. And
So I would
think,
say the same way. It is and stays difficult, and the longer folks had much longer job search times, up to 2 years and even more until they land the job. That would be my it won't get much better unless the market will grow bullish, which is not going to happen. What I say. Guys,
I mean,
thank you. We have so many questions that we could run this probably for 3 hours. But I have a hard stop 5 minutes after 5, so let's run it until then. I have one question in between. So, how do you think the current recruitment practices could be improved?
I'll give. There's many ways. I give one. I think job descriptions could be so much more honest. Now I know there's some regulations around this sometimes, which might be a blocker, but I think, like, if companies could write better job specs, I might be out of a job, quite frankly. Like, companies are so bad at writing job specs. Like, you read so many job specs, you read and you're just like, what are they? And what's normally happening is either ChatGPT, and the problem is ChatGPT just uses what's already out there, and what we do was out there was terrible. So it's just, we've got this recycle of terrible job descriptions. So,
and the same applies for motivational letters, by the way.
I say again.
The same applies for motivational letters. You know, if majority people write them with ChatGPT, that gets reinforced, and most of them are terribly boring. So
yeah, exactly. Like basically most motivation letters, it's like, I'm an esteemed person who's very infused. Like, nah, not reading the rest because I already know it's bullshit. So it's kind of a case of, like, for motivation letters, people need to write like they're speaking to a real person.
Yeah,
that's my advice. I'm sure you mirror that. And their job specs, I wish companies could just be more like, this is what we're about. This is specifically what we're looking for. This is what, like, the flavor of the role.
Yeah.
I don't think, like, the responsibilities is just keep it simple. It could be half the length and just really clear on what they want and what they're about. And I think companies would benefit and candidates would benefit too, because I think it's extremely confusing looking at a lot of job specs. You got to really read between the lines to have an idea what they're looking for, and that's totally unnecessary.
I saw so many terrible job descriptions which been written so high up that Bill Gates, compared with Albert Einstein, wouldn't dare to apply, and at the end the person was copy and pasting from my Excel sheet to the other, and it was all strategy and director and blah blah. I have here a very, very tough question of Rui Teixeira. Thank you very much for that, Rui. So based on my experience, gender and race do count a lot in small and mid-tier companies, especially in Zug. White people have more chances of success. This is my experience, at least.
I mean, it's interesting from my perspective. Okay, I've never seen discrimination on gender personally. I think there is a bit of an issue in terms of, I know I'm kind of avoiding this, but I'm just explaining a few things here. So I think I sometimes see issues where female candidates are less likely to negotiate.
Yes.
Or they're a lot more agreeable in negotiation style. So this is something I actively see and I try and coach around. And when it comes to race and things like this is I've not personally seen it, but again, I live in the Czech Republic. You know Czech Republic, we know Eastern Europe, and generally speaking, can we say that people in Central Eastern Europe are fully, like, international, global?
No.
In some cases, no. It's just a reality.
So one correction, Czechia is Central Europe, so that's what we Czechs hate if somebody puts that in the Eastern Europe. So we are Central Europe, so Czechia is Central Europe and nothing else. No, but I am fully with you. If I may add something on this, I would see the opposite. I see a lot of females with migration background having better chances on the job market. And this is my tiny skewed statistic with 500 people I saw until now. Now there is a backlash due to the Trump administration. Some companies are slashing all the D&I initiatives, which I think is wrong. Maybe they overdid it a little bit. In my eyes, the most difficult stance is a conservative white male over 55. This is what I see. Those are the last one who are being invited to the interview and getting jobs.
Yeah, it's a challenging one. Here's what I'd like to say. I mean, I think the media has a habit of focusing on gender or focusing on race or age the reality is when it comes to recruiting, there's so many variables.
Yeah.
Qualifications, how you like, honestly, the biggest discrimination in recruitment by a long, long way is how someone looks. Good looking people do way better, right? And that's nothing controversial. The science backs that. The science around the halo effect is extremely solid. So it's like, if we're going to complain about discrimination, it's on looks, your DNA. So it's like, so there's so many variables when it comes to this. It's hard to have without having a 3-hour conversation and a whole wad of scientific papers, it's hard to really make any conclusions. The only advice I really recommend to anyone, I'm sure you mirror this, is it's important not to have a victim's mindset. Even if you are a 55-year-old white male, or you're a race you feel you're discriminated against, if you get into this mindset that you are being discriminated against or life's not fair, it's just a negative cycle that works even more against you. Like, having this, like, taking responsibility, doing the best of what you have, it is, as unsexy as it is, and it's the only path to take in life and in the job market. And I hope that's not sounding condescending, but it is just kind of, at least how I see it, is the truth.
Yeah. Another question by Elsa. Could you provide your thoughts about the use of AI to review CVs before reach out to quote unquote human recruiter?
I think my view's a bit different to you on this. I don't think anything's changed. I think there's been no real. I really don't think AI has made much difference. Before, it's getting like, CVs are being sorted through by some sort of program, keyword checker, or a person. If anything, it's probably going to get better, because I imagine AI is probably actually better than most people. So if AI is going to start checking through CVs, it's more likely a good thing, to be honest. It will just be doing the discrimination, hopefully, in a better way than we discriminate. Because I'm going to discriminate anyway. That's what everyone does when it comes to you've got to pick someone to interview. You can't interview 100 people. So if it's a big deal or not, I don't know. But I'm actually leaning towards it being more positive. Personally.
I think I'll use this classical job scan and upload your CV in the job scan and get the 85% and be happy about that. I've heard already opinions of very experienced recruiters who programmed the ATS system. They claim this is really an only applicant test tracking system and nothing else, that you are not automatically thrown out of the system because of your CV. That's so I think there is a very nice industry building around it. So which claim, if you scan your CV through our system, pay us, I don't know, $100 per month, then you have better chances. And again, it's questionable. That would be my take. That would be my take on that. Good. 52. The time is running. This is a good sign. Janet,
we can do part two.
Yeah. And there is another one. Show it's possible to have other webinars about other countries. There are hopes for the pharma industry as well. Yeah, Janet, I thank you for this question. I will take a note and will invite an expert to talk exactly about that, because world is not only Switzerland, and there are many countries, very interesting pharma industry scene. So that we will talk about it. So if I am searching for a job, why should you look out for a headhunter? So why should I?
I mean, there's a few facts. First of all, headhunters will have some roles that aren't on the market. Like, I'd say nearly all roles I have are not public. I'm working on maybe 8 positions right now. So obviously, there's going to be a certain percentage of all the jobs that are only going to go through a headhunter. So I think it's good to have some good headhunters in your network. And if you get contacted by one who seems legit and decent, like, be trusting, I'd say. And if they let you down, they let you down. But that's just, we have that with all people in every form of life, right? So I think that's where they can add value, and there will be some who can make things happen that maybe wouldn't otherwise happen. But statistically, it depends on what you do. If you're employed, you're very high level, you have very little time. Let's say you're an incredible salesperson who's a top salesperson in your company. A recruiter is great in that case, because you haven't got time to apply for jobs, and they can open doors because it's quite easy in your case. But if you're very active in the market, maybe you've been employed for some time, I still think headhunters can help. But maybe manage your expectations in terms of like how helpful they can be, at least in the short term. I mean, there are candidates I knew 10 years ago, right? And maybe after knowing them for 2 years, I got them a job. And then a year later, I hired people for their team. And 2 years later, I got them another job because they got made redundant. And 2 years later, I'm hiring for them again. So it's like, that's like 10 years worth of relationship and value with that one person. So I'm going to shut up and listen to this question, I guess.
Yeah. Antra, what are the language-related problems that high-level position in Switzerland have?
I mean, I would say if it's a global company, business speaking English is all that really matters. But obviously, speaking German and French is an advantage. If it's a local level company, obviously German, French is going to be important. I think the bigger thing is how you communicate. There's a lot of people who are fluent in English, but their communication isn't high level.
Yeah.
And that is entering the worlds of sales, communication, marketing. The majority of CEOs come from sales. Vast majority, and it's because they've got the best communication skills. So I'd say at a high level, that's what makes a difference: the ability to communicate, not the language. If that makes sense.
I would see it the same way. Exactly, you described it very well. You might miss on some side coffee machine communication if there are many Germans, for example, but if they're like at Novartis, English is completely enough. What advice would you give someone who would like to break into the pharmaceutical industry? So what would be your biggest advice? Oh, we lost Matt. No, he's back.
No, still here. So I don't know if it's entry level or if it's somebody who is maybe in automotive or med devices. It is challenging. I mean, let's say medical devices. I don't see many medical device people making it to pharma. It's a very small percentage who make it. So the examples normally is knowing the right person. I'm afraid, like it's like networking. Like if you're good friends with a VP and you've got great communication skills, you're great sales, or you're very good, and they see that, they might just be like, okay, I know you're from devices, but you'll figure the rest out. I know you're a good person.
Yeah.
But that's the only way. I don't think you'll ever, if you're devices and you're applying to pharma role, at face value, it's very, very hard. And even harder for automotive or FMCG or other things. But it can be done. It's just, you're going to have to, like, networking is probably the most effective manner, which I know is, a lot of us introverts don't like it, but it's just kind of, if you just look at the reality, that's kind of what makes the world work.
Somebody asking, sorry guys, I really cannot show all those questions because it's so much stuff. We could run for 2 hours. So, but there is a very funny one. Is the urban myth true? If you get in contact with a headhunter, you have already lost his or her interest. The headhunter needs to find and reach out to you. Not true.
Nonsense. Yeah, absolutely not.
Urban myth. Now that we are some urban myth breakers, that's our busters. That's really good. What about pharmacovigilance related positions? Which language is the most important?
Depends again if it's local level pharmacovigilance or global. If it's global, English. If it's local, you probably need a bit of German, I'd assume, or French.
Easy question. Picture or not on the CV? In Switzerland, yes. That would be my answer.
I'd say yes, but make sure it's a good picture. Get a photo shoot. Do some tampering with some AI if you must, but make sure you have a good picture. It has to be like demonstrate you in a good way. But I'm generally for it.
And we have another classic. What is the minimal level of personal information such as address, age, and so on to include on a CV?
I think in theory, I'd maybe just put location in terms of Zurich, Switzerland, but that's the minimum. Yeah. Everything else is kind of okay. At the end of the day, that's normally not what's going to get you the interview. It's the fact that you've got the right experience they're looking for.
Yeah, I have a colleague of mine. She was hired at the age of 67. She never put her age on the CV, and she was regularly hired, but very skilled person in medical affairs in oncology. So So basically, if you have the right skills, which is demanded on the market, nobody cares if you are, what's your age, So that's a good one.
If you're on self-improvement, looking after yourself, you'll be probably younger than most 40-year-olds. That's how I see it. So,
yeah, if you read job descriptions, they want everything, entire whole world, which is not great. Not everybody, no one will have entire world level of skills. The requirement should clearly be with specific requirement, I think. Yeah, absolutely correct, Jaganan. That's it. So we have 5 minutes to close it. So let's come to last closing question from my side. How do you see the future of recruitment evolving in your sector?
I think headhunters and recruiters, exec search will probably be pushed down. I think there'll be less of us, to be honest. I think talent acquisition internally in companies is going to be more of a thing. I think there'll always be headhunters and recruiters as long as it's jobs. But I think the sector is shrinking, and it probably will be more and more niche to the niche roles, basically. So it's maybe negative view on my industry, but I think it will shrink over time. I think it's inevitable, but it will always exist. The good recruiters will do fine. The bad recruiters will be pushed out. We'll have to sell something else.
The invisible hand of the market will sort it out. Yeah, it was really very, very cool to have you, Matt. Thank you very much for this session. I think we need to do a second one sometimes, because I have questions for another 30 minutes, but unfortunately I didn't block my calendar good enough after that. So 45 minutes are, but on the other hand, it's a good sign. The worst thing, if it's the person is boring and you have to wind it down after 30 minutes, and that's really
as I said, the number one reason people get rejected is talking too much. So maybe we shouldn't either.
Just a very, very short advertisement from my side. I am running tomorrow and next LinkedIn Live at 3:15 p.m. And it's about how you can use LinkedIn to improve your career or your business. So for those who are interested in this topic, please join us. And connect to Matt, follow him, reach to us on LinkedIn if you like. And thank you very much for being with us. And I'm looking forward to the next LinkedIn Live. And Matt, a lot of success as a managing director of Open Book Executive. Very cool term. I like it a lot. And if you are not a great artist, I'm really sure that you are a great hunter. So warm regards to Czechia. Enjoy my first homeland, and stay tuned. Thank you very much, guys. Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.